Everyone for joining us this morning for our webinar on traditional funding and exporting through the SBA. We are very happy to have all of you joining us. For everyone that is logged on as well as registered, please remember that we will be recording today's session. Because of that, we will be sending everyone a link to the recording as well as a survey after today's webinar. Also, please join us for our Q&A session at the end of today's webinar in case you still have some questions that have yet to be answered. Now I'd like to introduce you to our team. My name is Brittany Mataliano. I am the Program Manager for the Patsy T. Mink Center for Business and Leadership. And I would like to introduce all of you to Maylin Zambrano. Maylin is the Program Coordinator and will be assisting with any technical issues that we experience today. If you find that you get logged off or you need any technical assistance, please email Maylin. She'll be putting her information into the chat area for your reference. And also too, we would like to introduce you to our presenters. Our presenters today are Mary Dale, Economic Development Specialist for the U.S. Small Business Administration for Hawaii. And also we have Jamie Lum. Jamie is the Business Development Program Manager for the Department of Business, Economic Development and Tourism, or DBED for short. And for your information, here's their contact information if you'd like to contact them after today's webinar. Now I hand it over to you, Mary, to get us started.
Thanks, Brittany. So welcome everybody. Want to kind of get right into it. I think they're going to pull up my slides, and you just have to forgive me because I'm not used to using PowerPoint. Most of the time I just ramble on when I'm in person talking to people. So I got to try to make sure I keep up with the slides and don't get ahead of myself. Probably won't happen today because if any of you guys have seen me present before or know me, you know I get kind of ahead of myself and I might start rambling about anything that may not have anything to do with exporting. So we're hoping today that we can learn some information about exporting, maybe have some alternatives to situations that are happening here locally, and may open door to some other avenues for you to get your product or services out to. So if you could go in the chat, and then I'll continue to speak, but if you can go in the chat, and if anybody who is actually maybe currently doing some exporting could say yes to that. If you're not exporting, then you don't have to do anything. And if you are exporting, to which countries that you may be exporting currently to. And then we can, take a look at that down the line, or Brittany can let me know what people are saying there. So we wanted to start off, Brittany, you can move on to the next slide. We can go past that as well. So just a little overview on what SBA does besides the exporting. We have helped businesses to start, grow, and expand and recover. And what we mean about that, usually when we look at START, we're looking at the counseling services that we offer. So we offer directly counseling with our outreach team that's in our office, myself and a couple others, or usually we use our export counselors through our Small Business Development Center that we have over in Manoa. They're currently all online though now. And we offer our Women's Business Center who can help you with counseling services as well. We have SCORE and our VBOC, which is the Veteran Business Outreach Center. So for those of you that are veteran business owners or spouses of veterans, you can access their resources as well through one-on-one counseling. So for those of you who are too shy, to get out there on workshops and you just want to sit down with somebody one-on-one, or you need more in-depth training, you can do that. In order to grow your business, we look at the capital. Do you have enough financing? We're going to cover some of those avenues today. So in order to grow business, a lot of times you're looking at it through those, do I have enough money? Do I have a line of credit? What am I going to do to help with this business? And sometimes for the expansion mode, those of you, and we're not going to go into a lot of details with this one today, but we do have some upcoming workshops that will cover. is the government contracting component. So those of you who maybe are doing business with, other small businesses, maybe you're doing business with commercial business, but you want to get into that public sector. So you want to try to do work with the federal government. We do have set aside programs to cover that. If you need more detail, you can give me a call later about that. And then we're kind of where we are today is recovery, where SBA offers, financing assistance for disasters. Usually those have been in the past, natural disasters, hurricane, floods, anything like that. But right now, the disaster we're trying to help recover from is the COVID-19 response. And part of that today we want to go into, so hopefully that exporting can be maybe an avenue to help with that recovery. So next slide, Brittany. So are you ready to export? That's what I want to ask everybody that's out there who's thinking about it. You maybe heard, maybe you've gotten an inquiry, but you want to know, are you really ready to export? So what we can do for you, besides the workshops, and we can sit down one-on-one and we can kind of go over some of these, and you can do it for yourself. You got to look at it. How do I get started in exporting? Everybody wants to ask, if you start a small business and you already, gotten your license from DCCA and things like that, you know how to do business locally, but how do you do business internationally? There are some similar components. Do you have a business plan? And does that business plan offer, doing business overseas? So there are probably going to be different things that you're looking at when you're looking at, exporting as opposed to doing your business domestically. And the first thing we always want to know, if you're ready to export, do you already have a domestic business? Have you already made sales here in the U.S. and you want to, maybe you've got an inquiry from overseas and you want to move on with that? And what you want to do is to find out one of the components of your export plan should involve what's going to be your COVID response. And that's going to be even domestically now to look at that. But have you done your market research? So how do you go about doing that? Who's my competition and what's the overseas client looks like? Next slide. So these are kind of the things we want to look for. Do you have an export plan? Now, and we're going to cover each of these topics as we go along. What are the trade barriers for exporting? Because there are always issues, whether it be your domestic business or international. There are some things you have to consider when you're exporting that you may or may not consider when you're doing your domestic business. Do you have the right tools to export? How do you market internationally? Financing for your export business, and what countries may be best for your product or service. Next slide. Okay, so when we think about our export plan, you have to have that, what I said earlier, a COVID response. We know this has been affected internationally, so every country has had some effects. Some is not as much as the US and other countries, but you want to find out what you're going to do to overcome the issues that may be in those countries. So the first thing you want to do is you're going to figure out, how can I do my market research on those particular countries to find out what is best for my particular business, and if they're having issues with COVID, am I going to be able to export to them? So maybe look for countries that have a low response or are recovering from that and are back on the buying end. So last night I wanted to look up some of the countries. I know everybody's, had wondering, okay, I want to sell my product, who can I get it out to? So one of the things we always ask you to do in any plan is do your SWOT analysis. And that means your strengths, weakness, opportunities, and threats. Now for this one, we know, as a business what your strengths are going to be. You have to be able to list those strengths. Maybe what you have, people in other countries, you have contacts there. And you have to remember, when you're doing business abroad, in the majority of countries, you have to have a partner in that country. You just can't go over there and do business and you're set up. So one of the things you have to look for is do I have a contact, do I have a partner that's a viable partner to be able to export to that country? So when you're doing your market research, you can get part of that market research from contacting our small business development centers. If you talk to our small business development center that's here in Manoa, but they're really not in Manoa because they're all online, which is where we all are these days, but they're actually in the process of moving from that location as well. But if you contact them, you can ask them about different countries. But the best material for exporting, when you want market research, is to check the website for the U.S. Department of Commerce. And the U.S. Department of Commerce has what we call country commercial guides. And those guides tell you everything about that particular country. You know, it tells you about the climate there. It tells you about the economic outlook in that country. It tells you what they're doing, what's the best products or service for that particular country. So you want to make sure that that market research, and this is all free. So if you go in, you sign up for it, you can get free market research through them with the country commercial guides. You select the country you want the information on, and they will give you that. And so what you're going to look for is what your particular product or service, you know, has to offer, and if they're buying that. The other thing you want to also is to find out, how do I go about getting paid? So when I looked up last night, I found out, I pulled up 2 countries that I thought we could discuss just a little bit, and it may or may not be beneficial for your particular product or service. You're going to have to find that out by the market research. But one of them was New Zealand. They had a pretty aggressive lockdown when it came to COVID. And so a lot of that has been alleviated. Not all. They have had some upticks, but very little. So they're still doing a lot of business internationally, so importing a lot from the U.S. And you have to look at what their big import is. So I was going through their skeleton to find out. And so for New Zealand, they do a lot of e-commerce. So for those of you that don't have a website set up, that may be something you want to look at, because their information for, I think theirs is the healthcare sector is a big sector in New Zealand. So if you're looking at that, also the clothing industry, I found, and I have my little notes here on this little post-it. It's very, you know, very professional right here that I have written down. But 2/3 of what they buy from the U.S. are clothing and entertainment related. So if you're in that sector, that may be a market for you. And I mentioned about how to get paid. Everybody, you know, if you're doing business domestically, you kind of know my business partner or whoever I'm working with is right around the corner. If I don't get paid, if they're not paying me, all right, I can go to them and find out, or I can write them a letter. If I'm doing business internationally, that's not always, you know, the easiest thing. So we want to look at things that you can help with international payment. Sometimes payment in advance is beneficial for you, and sometimes you want to look at letters of credit. But letters of credit are kind of on the old school way of looking at things, because there are fees involved when you have to open a letter of credit. So you want to look at the most advantageous way to do business. And one of the things we have to discuss is insurance. So I don't know how many of you guys know about the Export-Import Bank. It's not a bank. They don't actually handle import, and they're a federal agency. And this agency actually assists small businesses that want to take out insurance policy on doing business internationally. So if you have, it's just like a car insurance policy you would take out for your buyer. So say you have a buyer in New Zealand, and this is a new buyer and you're not sure about them. That insurance policy you can take out with Exim Bank will allow you to extend them terms. And what I mean by that is they will investigate that buyer to make sure they're a legitimate buyer. And then they will give you an insurance policy on them. So that way you can extend to them. You can say, okay, buyer, you can buy my products. I'm not going to ask you for the money up front. I'm going to give you 30 days to pay me back. So that way, when I ship you my product, you'll be able to sell those, and then when you get paid within 30 days, you're going to pay me. And if that falls through, that insurance policy kicks in and they can take care of that. And that also accounts for, several things when you're doing with international insurance policy. It helps with country, if the country breaks out in war, they'll handle that. So that looks at, some of the political factors. If the country has stopped accepting U.S. products for some reason, they will cover that. The one thing it won't cover is currency devaluation. So if you're doing business and the dollar drops, or if you're getting paid in money from the Brazilian and that drops, then that's what you're stuck with. It won't cover the devaluation of that money. So part of it also, and I would ask Brittany if we got any questions so far in the chat, or Maylin. I'll pause. They told me to pause earlier. I never listen. This is part of my problem.
Thank you, Mary. Right now, we don't have any questions in the chat area, but we do have a couple that did mention that they are exporting to Japan, Korea, and then also to Australia, Canada, Taiwan, and Denmark.
Nice.
So if anyone does have any questions, please enter them into the chat area, and we'll be stopping throughout the taking pauses throughout the presentation to answer any questions you may have, in addition to the Q&A at the end.
Okay, thanks, Brittany. So the other factors that you may not think of when you're dealing with trade barriers are the political factors. What's going on in those countries overseas, and you want to find out before you start doing business there, because after, it's going to be too late. What are the economic factors? Do the folks that live in that country, do they have the money to purchase your product or service? Or do you have to sell to the private sector or the public sector? You can find out. And also with Export-Import Bank, they also offer what we call a country limitation schedule. And that will show you in those countries what countries we can do business with. So it'll list all the countries, and it'll say next to it, okay, as a U.S. company, you're okay to do business in the public sector, but not the private, or vice versa. It'll tell you, well, you can do stuff limited, but this is the only part of the country you'll be able to get an insurance policy to cover. So you want to make sure those countries are not off cover, as they say, altogether, that you cannot do business at all. Because if it finds out you can't, then if something falls through, you're on your own. The U.S. Will not back you up on that. So you want to find out on the country limitation schedule, and your lender is going to need to know if you decide, okay, I need to get some type of loan, and we're going to go over that in another slide, that you're going to have to make sure that's a viable country to do business in. And so find out who your competition not only locally is, but who's your global competition. Who sells what your product or service in that particular country, so you know how you're going to be able to compete. So if you know, okay, I sell, food products, what companies that are over there that sell that same food product, and how do I compete with those? And sitting down with a counselor will help you to go over that, to figure out, okay, this is my competition that I'm actually going to be, dealing with. So if I went in New Zealand and I want to go to Auckland, here is the actual people that sell what I do, and how do I compete? Is my price better? How fast can I get it into the market? Is mine, gluten-free? What are the factors that sets me apart? Just like any local business you would do, you want to find out what's your niche in that global market, and which product or service that you want to export. Because if you are a business that has several products and different services, maybe when you're entering that market, you don't want to try to get everything in there at once. That might be too expensive for you. But maybe what you want to do is to say, okay, we're going to focus on one or two products, and we're going to see how we develop in that market, and find out if it's going to work for us. And if it does, we can move on with entering with others. If it doesn't, maybe we back out or try a different country. Next slide. And I'll wait and see if anybody has any questions in the chat, Brittany. Okay, Brittany's not saying anything, so I'm assuming there are no questions. So the other big factor for any business is the cost. What are these new business costs that you're now occurring? Because normally you know what your costs are locally, what I'm doing domestically, this is what I have to pay. Now you're looking at doing business overseas. Okay, we have new cost factors. What is it going to cost me to do this product? The first thing you're going to have to figure out, okay, this is what it costs me to do the product now. Do I have to make any changes to this particular product in order to get it into a particular country? So for instance, I had a client, they did, different soda pop. And so one of theirs was strawberry. Well, in the country they wanted to do business with, the red dye was unacceptable in that particular country. So they had to figure out, if I reformulate this, is it going to taste the same? Is it going to be the same flavor? And will the buyer still want this particular product? And it turns out it didn't. It could not, work. It changed the whole flavor. The buyers said they didn't want it. And so now they had to back out of the deal. So you want to make sure, just because something here in the U.S., is acceptable, the country that you're trying to do business with, you need to find out if it's acceptable in those countries. And one of the best things to do, if it's food related, I would suggest you get a hold of the Department of Ag. And if you, give me an email or give me a call later on, I can get you the connection for the Department of Ag person that handles their exporting to let you know what the factors are that go into, food-related products overseas. And I mentioned earlier, maybe the product is gluten-free, or maybe if it's organic. You got to figure out now, if it's organic, what's the shelf life of that? And so the shelf life, maybe let's say it's 2 or 3 weeks. Okay, how long is it going to take me to get it there? And how long is it going to be on that shelf to be able to sell it and be able to be viable? So those are the kind of things you're going to have to look at. And what's considered organic here is not always considered organic in another market. So working with the Department of Ag is going to help you figure those things out as well. And that's one of the things that may increase the cost of your product. So now what maybe you had to create your product and it was $1 to make it, now it's $1.50. So what that's going to mean to you, now I'm going to have to raise the price of my business internationally. And a lot of times you can do that. Business overseas, they expect, if they want a certain product, they're willing to pay the cost of it depending on what it is. Now we got to look at, how am I going to get my product to that market? And when I look at shipping, am I going to actually put it on a ship, or am I going to put it on an airline? And if I want to put it on the airline or a ship, how do I have to pack this to make sure that product is still good when it reaches its destination? And this is also going to be a factor when it comes to the insurance that you have on shipping it. So let's say that you decide we're going to ship it and the final destination is going to be to the warehouse of your buyer. Now, along the way, we put it on a ship. Now that ship, breaks down in the middle of the ocean, and it takes 3 days to repair. And maybe some of the items, they fell overboard. I'm just getting dramatic so you can kind of find the point that I'm going to make. Once you lose that product, depending on what kind of insurance and where the title change, which usually is at that warehouse, according to how you were shipping, you're going to still be responsible when that stuff fell overboard. If it had reached its destination, got to the buyer at the warehouse, that title changed, and it's all of them if something else happens afterward. But as long as it's on that boat, then you're going to be liable for that. So you want to make sure you have that, the insurance that's going to cover that in case that happens, because you're still going to be liable to get that product over to that particular buyer. Other things you might have to look at is translation. If you're doing business in a country that you don't speak the language, now am I going to have to hire somebody that does that? Am I going to have to hire a translator in that country if I visit, which you want to do? And which, languages do they speak, which dialect? Because just because somebody speaks Japanese doesn't mean it's going to come off correctly depending on what the dialect is, and you don't want to offend people when you're overseas. We always try to tell people when you're talking to businesses overseas, don't use like slang and other words because it doesn't translate the same as it does here locally, and you want to make sure you're not offending anybody. So look at that. The big factor is the marketing. How can I market my business abroad? And this again is where maybe you can use the services of Department of Commerce, the U.S. Department of Commerce, because they have a service that you can use to find buyers overseas, to find distributors of your product, called the Gold Key service. And that Gold Key service is a fee for it. And I'm not going to go too in detail with, but part of how you can pay for that service, and Jamie, that's on with DBED today, can kind of discuss, she's going to discuss the STEP program and how that can be helpful in paying for that service. But the Gold Key service allows you to get overseas, find distributors of your product because you don't know that market and you want to find somebody that does, and they've screened these distributors, and you can select the one that you think is going to be most beneficial for your particular product or service. Because what you don't want to do is to let somebody say, okay, you can have all of New Zealand to try to sell my product. Yeah. That's probably not going to be the best choice because nobody's going to be able to handle the whole country. What you may want to say to them is like, hey, we can do a contract that allows you to have, this section. So even if they were here in the U.S., you might say they're in Hawaii, you can have the Big Island, and we'll see what you do with that. We'll set it up for a year and see how that works. If you make sales there enough at a certain point that we all agree on, then we'll move over to Maui to do that. The same with other countries. You're like, okay, you're in New Zealand, you can take Auckland. If you can get sales up for me at 200,000 or 300,000 in the first year, then we will look at Wellington to maybe start entering that part of the countries. Or else, maybe I need to find a different distributor for that market who knows a little bit more about it. Okay, we're going to move to the next one, and then any questions?
Okay. So, Mary, we actually did have a question. Oh, there's some feedback. Okay. So, Mary, we had a question in the chat. And so earlier you had gone over that there's resources, websites that people can look into for information about who is importing from the United States. What are those resources again? Or what are some other resources that they can tap into?
Okay, so I think what they're asking about is when I mentioned the country commercial guides, those are online at the U.S. Department of Commerce website. If you go there, it'll tell you when you plug in what country you want to look at is what kind of products or services they buy. There's also contacts for the country desk officers. These desk officers are actually located in Washington, D.C., but they cover all different kind of countries. So you might have a desk officer that covers the New Zealand. You might have a desk officer that covers Africa. You might have one that covers a different country. So those desk officers are going to be actually U.S. citizens that work for the United States government that has information on what those countries buy, how you can get into them, and what's the barriers. I hope that was the answer.
Yes.
If not, call me and I'll give you the wrong answer in person. How about that?
Thank you, Mary.
Is that it?
Yes.
Okay, I guess so. Okay, so what you want to also figure out are your time frames and things for targeting your market. So how soon do you want to get into that market? You know, if you're starting now and you're thinking, okay, my business is really suffering right now in Hawaii, I need to find another resource, and maybe doing business abroad is where I need to be. So maybe within the next 6 months, you want to set your time frame. And then if that's what you're going to do, what am I going to do to be ready to enter those markets? Have I updated my export plan to include the funding that I'm going to utilize to target this? Because that's the other thing you have to look at, is that, do I have the money to enter a new market? Because like I said earlier, your costs are going to change when you go internationally. But even though your costs might be a little higher to start off with, you're going to probably be able to reach more people than you can just reach here in Hawaii or even on the mainland. 98% of, I think it's 96 or 96 to 98% of all business is outside of the US. So you're missing a big market if you're not looking to export, if you're ready for it. The other thing is to look at, how many countries do you want to penetrate? How many countries do I want to get into? So if I'm starting out and maybe I don't want to put too much money out there, but I want to have a more focused, marketing perspective, maybe I want to go to 1 or 2 countries so I can have a little diversity, and that I'm not so spread apart that I can't answer the call if people do need my product. Because you have to realize, once you start marketing like here or anywhere else, okay, say New Zealand or India or Australia says, I want your product. Are you going to be able to maintain the quality and the quantity that they need in those countries if you're in 6 other countries? So maybe starting out for exporting, you want to make sure, okay, I'm going to target maybe 1 or 2 countries that I know I can supply and the amount I need to be able to supply. Because if you're getting, whether it be food, whether it be, PPE, or whatever your product or service is, and I know I mentioned services, and a lot of times people don't consider services when they're thinking of export, but I'll tell you, we had a company, and that all they did was they actually developed they did the designs for hotels abroad. So their service is what they were exporting. So they would go to a country and they would say, okay, this hotel, we want to redesign it, their buyer, and they would draw up the plans, put the schematics together, and say, this is what we'd have it look like, and they would tell them who they can get in touch with in country to be able to do it, but they were the ones that would do the designs. And so they were selling their service to them, and they would get paid for that. So it's not all the time that it has to be a product itself. But when you are looking at the products, like I said, you want to find out how many products you need and what's going to be dedicated to that exporting. The regulations and the requirements are going to be key. You want to be able to contact, like I said earlier, for food products. You want to get to the Department of Ag. You also want to, call up the U.S. Export Assistance Center that's located in the Foreign Trade Zone here, and that's John Holman's. I don't have John's number on me, but I'm sure Jamie may have it in the next slide. And if not, you can just Google him, and he's the international trade specialist there that can help you find out from his contacts with the embassies overseas what these trade regulations or requirements are, because they vary from country to country. You don't enter every market the same way. I know a lot of small businesses here in Hawaii, they figure, oh, I want to do business in Japan. Japan is not the easiest market to start off with. So I always tell people, look at a market that may be similar to Hawaii, depending on what your product is. Maybe Australia is a good one, for example. If you did outdoor equipment and you wanted to go, that probably is a good market because the weather is similar. They have a lot of airlines that are going out there, maybe not currently, but normally on a normal day, we have a lot of airlines that will be going to that area. So shipping is probably not the biggest factor either. Most of it is in English, so you're going to be able to not possibly have to change some of your material over in that particular country. So look at those factors as well. And if you do have to change some of the material over, for, like Jamie will cover that, how STEP could help you and assist you with that. Any questions?
No questions right
Okay.
now.
Next slide. So do I have the necessary financing? And this is where everybody usually has the issue, whether it be for your domestic business or internationally. And you want to make sure, when you're doing business internationally, sometimes it takes a while before you get that first sale. You might set up meetings, you might attend trade shows. You're putting all this money into trying to develop your export market, but it may take a while to get there. So you want to make sure you're dedicated to doing export. So if you decide I want to do exporting and in 2 months you don't get there and you give up, that's probably not for you, because it takes a while to build that rapport. Like I said, you're going to have to find a buyer, a person. You have to find your buyers. You're going to have to also find that partner in country that you have a relationship with, so that you can have that partner that you can be able to allow to do business there as a U.S. company. And you're going to have to build up trust with that person in order to start doing business. And you want to learn the market itself and how your product is perceived. And you want to also learn, when you're researching, what kind of trade agreements does the U.S. have with that particular country? Because that becomes a factor when you're looking at intellectual property, meaning that I don't want to take something to this country and then my product or service is ripped off and somebody else is redoing it and selling it there. If the trade agreements are going to tell you how those things are negotiated, do you go to arbitration? Do you have legal rights if you're doing it in those countries? And a lot of times, if you're doing business in certain countries, you might not have the same rights as you do in other ones, depending on what type of trade agreement the U.S. has with those. So you want to read up, find out about those. And it's easy enough to just Google that, and those will come up depending on what country you want to do business with. So when we're looking at the financing component, you're going to have to determine, do I have enough money to establish this export market that I'm trying to set up? Okay, so one of the things we're going to look at, if you're a startup company, or you're not even necessarily a startup company, you're doing business already domestically, but you don't have any business internationally, what are the financial projections you're going to do? And I mentioned earlier, you can work with our Women's Business Center, which is the Patsy T. Meek Center that we're here with today. Also, our Small Business Development Center, SCORE, and the VBOC, depending on which one you want to utilize. And remember always, everybody, you can utilize all of them. Nothing says you can't use our Women's Business Center here. You said, hey, I like their workshops. I like working one-on-one with them. But maybe sometimes there's a area that maybe our Small Business Development Center has that they don't have that expertise in. Maybe you want to use them for that. Or maybe I'm a veteran. I feel more comfortable using the Veterans Outreach Center. Or maybe there's even a SCORE counselor that has been in international and you want to talk to that counselor. So you can utilize all of those resources. They're all free to you when it comes to the counseling component. So you want to find out what's there and what's available to you. The other thing you got to do, what is the cash flow, especially during times like this? If you're looking for new money from SBA guaranteed loans, are going to have to show that you have cash flow right now. And if you can establish that, you can show that, and you're able to get financing, what SBA at this time, if you get a loan before September 27th of this year, and that loan is fully funded and dispersed and out there, if they funded that, you can get a deferment on that for 6 months. And during that 6-month deferment, SBA will pay those payments for those 6 months. But it has to be fully funded, dispersed before the 27th of this year. And if that's the case, hey, that's money at least for 6 months. You're not going to have to worry about, making those payments. The federal government is going to make those payments if it's an SBA-backed loan. The other programs under the SBA loan programs are 3 different ones. when it comes to international business. So one is Export Express. Export Express is set up initially for businesses that want to do business internationally, but trying to build that market. So say you want to go to a trade show, or you want to redevelop your brochures or your website with the language of that country you're going to be doing business in. Export Express can be utilized for that. So you don't necessarily have to have an export deal in place yet, but you're building that export market. That's where you can use the funding for. You can also use it to get a line of credit. So if you're going to need to purchase inventory for that, you can use Export Express. Now, our international trade loan program is more for if you're an established business, you want a warehouse to set up, and you're preparing to do your manufacturing there at that warehouse. The international trade loan is going to be more efficient for that, to purchase that business location and do your operation there. Also, we have our 504 loan program that can help you with business location for this particular loan as well. But for today's presentation, we're talking more on the international trade loan. Lastly, the Export Working Capital Loan Program is specifically for businesses that are doing business abroad, but they have a deal already in place that they're trying to get financed. And that's where the Export Working Capital Loan comes in. Now, all of these loans can either be set up as term loans, meaning you get the loan, you get it funded, and you have a monthly payment on it for a number of years. The Export Express can also be utilized for a line of credit. So if you have that and you know, I'm going to be hiring staff because I need to have somebody fully dedicated to doing this business international, because what the country I'm dealing with, when it's daytime there, it's nighttime here, I might want to sleep because I'm the owner, but I want to hire somebody that can be dedicated to work those hours. And with the Export Express, I can use some of those funding through that line of credit to also pay salaries for that. But I also can use it for payroll, but I can also use it to purchase, things that are revolving. So when I'm going to do my marketing, that's going to be something I'm going to constantly be doing internationally, whether I'm going to try to market myself to a number of different countries, that I can use for the Export Express as well. So those are a number of ways that you can look for and how to utilize that. And then what you're going to look at when you see what your costs are involved in that. So you look at the payroll costs, you look at, before exporting, what those costs were and what they may be after I start exporting. And if you're dedicating somebody specifically for that, that's going to probably change. But the outcome, in the long run, hopefully, is you're going to increase your business, 2 or 3-fold because you're doing it to a wider audience. And then I'll pause because I saw Brittany pop up, so maybe somebody has a question or a complaint. Either one I take.
Thank you, Mary. So we actually have several questions. So Ronald Trent, his question was about how do they apply for the SBA back loans that you had gone over, and then also to Robbie had asked, where do we get into on Export Express? Mary, you're muted.
I keep forgetting I have to unmute myself. Drives me nuts. This is why I'm not good at PowerPoint or stuff online. But anyway, so for all of our loans, they're SBA are guaranteed loans, which means they're backed by we back those loans that come from a financial institution, which means they come from either a bank or a credit union. So what you would do as a business, you're going to have to submit your export plan, whether you're an existing business now or not. What the lenders have told us, if you're looking for any type of loan, whether it be for your business domestically or internationally, you're going to have to submit maybe not a full-on business plan that we will require if you're in business 2 years or less. But say you're an existing business and you want to do international, you're going to make sure within that plan that you're covering how are you going to address those COVID concerns. How am I going to still do business if my business is closed? If the government says tomorrow, okay, you got to shut your business down. If you're pursuing international, you can do everything via e-commerce, and ship those items over. So you got to address that in their plan to say, this is how I'm going to meet those needs. This is how I'm going to be able to do that. And here is, I can show for my business just being back operational, I do have cash flow and I'm going to be able to make those payments. And then once the lender sees your plan and they determine that you do meet the cash flow requirements and you do have a viable plan, and these buyers are waiting for your particular product or service, and they decide, okay, we can do this, they're going to determine if they need SBA's backing. And more than likely during this time, they're going to be looking at those loans to have an SBA guarantee behind it. And for Export Express and most of our international trade loans, there's a 90% guarantee. So what that means to the bank is that if you default on that loan, SBA is going to pay them up to that percentage of the loan. And then the evil government, I know Brittany's taping this, so I'm saying it on there, is going to go after you to get that money back. So you're not off the hook. You have the guarantee that SBA has supplied, but it's for the bank. It's not necessarily for the borrower, but it helps the borrower because it eases some of the fears and the risk that the lender is going to undertake. And I think you had another question from Robbie. You said, Brittany, I can't remember what that was.
Right. So Robbie had said, or had asked, how do we get into Export Express?
What do you mean get into Export Express? So you would just, when you meet with your lender, you would say, this is the program you want to, apply for. And then they're going to determine, is that the best program for you? And once they say, okay, you're doing business, you're trying to get your export started, you want to get into new markets, you want to change your brochures, and Export Express seems like the most viable loan program for you. It's a 90% guarantee for us. We need your plan, and we can move forward with that.
Thank you. And one more, and I think it's actually a good question, because I know that a lot of our Hawaii small business or our Hawaii businesses in general, they are really great in giving back to the community. And so a lot of them, they've gotten involved in social enterprise ventures. So Anne had asked, do nonprofits qualify for these types of loans?
Did you say nonprofits?
Right. Because
no, we do not finance any nonprofits. The only loans we have for nonprofits are the ones that we currently have, which was PPP and the EIDL. On our normal business guarantee loans, they do not qualify. Sorry about that.
No, thank you. And Mary, just to let you know, we've reached the halfway point of today's webinar.
Okay, so you're telling me I need to cut it. So I'm going to go quickly and finish it up. I didn't know I was talking that slow. I was trying to drag it on but I think I mentioned earlier, what countries that you can look at and maybe you haven't thought about. Like I said, a lot of times businesses in Hawaii want to do Japan and some of the other ones, but take a look at some of maybe the more easier countries, also Australia, Canada, but Japan is on the list. Multiple reasons that you might want to go. The English language is there. I think I covered that. Different trade agreements we have with those particular countries. You gotta go through the slides if you're telling me, Brittany, to rush it. I gotta rush through them, man. Just switch it. Okay, so this is just for maybe a plan if you're going to look at your staffing to do business internationally. Just add in what kind of hours that they're going to be working and figure out how that'll figure out the salaries you're going to also pay them later on. Next slide. And see, I was almost done anyway. So at the end right here is where you see the resource partners that I mentioned earlier, that you can get a hold of them by contacting them directly. At the bottom, you'll see our office number, but I think we have a better number for you on the next slide, Brittany. So I guess we changed one of the numbers, but we didn't change them. You'll see my number directly on here at the bottom, but the one you see on the other side for Cynthia Yamasaki, that number is actually incorrect. It should be 541-2900, extension 222. But if it's for international, you don't want to call Cynthia on that. She probably would be like, why are you calling me? You're harassing me. But if you are interested in loan forgiveness or anything to do with PPP or EIDL, she can answer those questions. We just didn't change the slide out soon enough to get that off. But instead of 2,200, it should be 2,900 to reach Cynthia. Next slide.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you, Brittany. Thanks, Mary. And aloha, everyone. I'm Jamie Lum, as Brittany already introduced me earlier, and I'm with the Department of Business, Economic Development and Tourism, otherwise known as DBED. I don't have this on my slide, but just to let you know, I am with the Business Development and Support Division. And aside from our High Step program, we also have other programs that help businesses within our division, such as our enterprise zones, our community-based economic development program, which has a component, a microloan program for companies that do qualify in that area. We also handle a lot of the international relations for the state of Hawaii, our sister state agreements. We do international marketing for to attract foreign students to Hawaii, which of course right now is very difficult, but that is another area that we cover, which is not part of High Step. But we are the administrator for the state's grant from the SBA, which comes from the State Trade Export Expansion Program, which is STEP, or in our case, we call it High Step. It is a competitive grant that the state applies for every year. And we've been quite fortunate to be able to be awarded that every year. We are currently awaiting decision on the next round of funding, which we should be able to find out by the end of September, which is the end of the federal fiscal year. So because we normally get awarded funds in September, just to give you an idea of the timing of the program, we normally do some of our kickoff events in the fall and towards the end of the calendar year, but we're normally planning for the following year. So in this case, if we are awarded funds, it will be for 2021. So what is High Step? It's an export development program, again, federal program funded by SBA primarily. We do put in some state funds for it. We do depend a lot on some our partner organizations. I have them listed there. We work with our district office of SBA, that would be Mary, and her team there. We also work with the Hawaii Pacific Export Council, our U.S. Department of Commerce, which is John Holman, who's already been mentioned, and his name, if you haven't seen, his name, number, and email are in the chat because Mary did mention him earlier as a resource. We work with the Patsy Mink Center. We work with the Small Business Development Centers, with Innovate Hawaii, which is under the Hawaii Technology Development Corporation. We also work with our Department of Agriculture and with Foreign Trade Zone number 9. So we do not operate alone. We have created this very good ecosystem, as we call it, for our companies that are interested in exporting. So the High Step program is open to all levels of companies that are still considering exporting, all the way to those who are companies that have been exporting but are looking to expand. So we have several different components to the program. Brittany, you can go to the next slide, please. We basically have three components to our program.
And Jamie?
Yes.
Sorry. Can you go a little closer to your mic. We have some attendees that are having a little trouble hearing you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is that better? I should have checked
Yes.
where. Okay. Okay. Before I go on, can I just point out, I do have our website up there, which is, if you don't remember the full extension, it's invest.hawaii.gov. We have an exporting tab, and if you go under the exporting tab, you'll find all the information that I talk about today on our high step portion of the website. So Mary did an excellent job of laying out all of what is required for companies that are thinking of exporting. And she talked about an export plan. So the first component of the high step is what we call our export readiness program. It's basically a series of training seminars, which we used to offer in person, but now we're doing webinars, and business advising services with our partner organizations. So many of the components that Mary talked about are areas that we do offer seminars on, like the export financing, like the logistics, like marketing. So we do have issue-specific topics as well as market-specific topics. So if you're interested in a particular market, we will partner with, and we do these sessions through the Hawaii Pacific Export Council. We've been partnering a number of these market-specific sessions with the U.S. Commercial Service Officers, as Mary also mentioned, another resource with the U.S. government. The people that are actually serving in those countries to provide attendees of the training sessions background information on the market that they're serving in, trends, the types of products that the people in that country are looking for to get from the US, et cetera. So that's our export readiness, the training sessions. I would like to mention that we have videotaped the sessions from, I believe, 2017 through, trying to think what were those, the last session we did in person this year was probably in February 2020. So if you go onto our website, you can actually, we have a library of all of the past video sessions, of the sessions videotaped. So you can access that for free. So, and all of this is free. You just sign up. So we will be continuing to offer this come in 2021. And again, until such time that we can do them in person, we will be offering them online. We actually had been offering them online for the neighbor island companies because we do hold them down at the foreign trade zone, or we were holding them down at the foreign trade zone. So, but the kinds of information that you'll get from these training sessions, if you do not already have an export plan, they are designed to help you put your export plan together, as Mary was talking about. Or if you have one, it will help you to maybe rethink it a little, tweak it a little. But the export plan is definitely something you need if you are going to be looking into selling your products to foreign markets. So those are all the kinds of things that Mary talked about that you need to consider before you really want to start spending money on exporting. So that's our export readiness portion of the program. Oh, you can stay on that slide. Sorry, Brittany. I'll cover the other two components, and really what we're trying to do with export readiness is building a pipeline into the other two components of the program. So the other are our Hawaii pavilions, which what we do is we will take a group of Hawaii companies and we will exhibit together under the umbrella of the Hawaii banner in a particular trade show. Of course, as you know, with COVID-19, with the pandemic we're currently in, that traveling is restricted, and most of the trade shows have either just canceled and are postponing till such time that it can be done in person again. Many of them are actually going online and doing virtual trade shows. So just to let you know that SBA does allow STEP funds to be used for any virtual trade shows that companies might want to participate in. So that's that is a good decision that's been made, and they've been flexible in trying to accommodate all of the changes with the pandemic as people look to try to continue to sell in foreign markets. So, but normally we have, we would normally do a couple of trade shows a year. Just to let you know, for 2020, we actually still are doing the Tokyo International Trade Show, which is a trade show that we've had probably the largest participation in. That is still happening, but again, it's not it's not quite virtual. What they're doing is they're actually finding people there. If you don't already have an agent or some sort of representative in Japan, they're finding people there to represent you. So it's sort of a combination, but anyone that might be interested in it, you can contact me, and I'll put you in contact with my colleague who is planning that right now. So, but that is one that's still on, so to speak, for this year. For 2021, we'll just have to see how things go. We were supposed to be in the Natural Products Expo West in Anaheim, another show that was going to be our first time show, an area that many of our Hawaii companies have wanted to get into, the natural products area. That show was canceled. That was supposed to be in March. They are right now still planning to have the show in March of 2021, and we are scheduled to do that show pending, of course, how things are right now with the pandemic. So 2021 I see kind of as a big transition year for us in terms of how we operate this program as it concerns trade shows. And so we'll continue to keep companies updated on that. We are looking into other options. Like I said, some shows are being offered virtually, and we ourselves are looking at possibly doing some sort of trade show, maybe more of a trade mission type of thing virtually. So these are the things that are still being looked at in the works. The last component is our high step company assistance. And this is in a portion of the program that companies can actually get funding directly from us. It's on a reimbursement basis actually, but it's to help implement portions of your export plan. So the very first thing you would need in order to participate in this or apply for any kind of company assistance is your export plan. That's something that we will look at. So right now, depending on the funding we get, we would, in the past, the maximum amount companies have been able to receive is $7,500. We may look at increasing that to $10,000 depending on, again, the level of funding that we get from the SBA. But this is offered on a competitive basis, actually. It's something that you need to apply for. Unfortunately, because our department, or I guess our program, we are not statutorily allowed to just give out grants. So in order to follow state procurement, you actually go through what is the equivalent of a request for proposal process. So there is an application that's put out. Just to let you know of the timing, we normally put the application out around early November, and we'll give you probably 2 months. So it will be due in January. So as I mentioned, it is offered on a reimbursement. You would have to spend money first. If you are awarded funding, you would have to spend money first and then request reimbursement. As I said, we're not sure what the maximum will be depending on what we would get from SBA, but in the past we have given a maximum amount of $7,500. That's what it was this past year, and if we may go to 10,000 if we're able to. One important thing I would like to point out, and this is a point Mary made, when you're getting into exporting, and one of the things that's required is that you have resources available to pay for exporting costs. It's not it's a decision that needs to be thought out, and again, Mary covered that in her presentation. And so one of the requirements that we have is that companies that apply for company assistance have at least $200,000 in sales revenues from their previous year. Again, that's to make sure that the company does have, we know that the company has resources to be successful in exporting. We do have to collect information from companies that participate in High Step. If you go to a trade show, if you get company assistance, we need to report to SBA on the sales of that are made, and so that's one of the things that that SBA looks at is return on investment for what amount of money they've given us. So these are the kinds of things that we need to make sure that when we review applications that companies are, that's one of the things we look at in the export plan. If you've looked at your potential sales in that market and what your predictions are, so that we can look at things like return on investment. Some of the things that the funding under the company assistance can be used for, again, this is what's listed. Some of these things have changed because of the pandemic, but things like airfare for traveling to trade shows, trade show expenses, the cost for renting booths and for exhibiting, for shipping products to and from the show, and also shipping sample products to potential buyers. Mary mentioned the Gold Key service that the U.S. commercial service under the U.S. Department of Commerce offers. Funding from company assistance can be used for Gold Key. You can also use funding for your website to translate and localize your website for the particular market that you're looking at going into. You can use it to translate your marketing materials. You can use it for compliance testing. If you have a product that needs to meet certain standards or get certain types of certifications for particular markets, you can use it for that. You can also use it for export, what they call export research tools. So you cannot hire consultants to do research for you, but there are services out there. There are reports that sometimes require a fee, and you can use it for that. There are some new expenses that, again, as we go through this pandemic, SBA is looking at what are allowable costs. Because of the area of e-commerce and digital marketing is becoming very important. They are looking at expanding the use of STEP funds for these areas. I don't have the exact direction from SBA just yet, but they are coming out with that. So just know that those are areas of expenses that step funds can be used for. So that's it in a nutshell, and I'll go on, but I'm sure I talked a lot right now. I apologize for that, and please let me know what questions you might have at this time.
Thank you, Jamie. Right, and we actually did have a couple questions that came through. And so the first one was, what about the inspection at stages and insurance for perishable items? So I'm sure that your team probably get this question a lot as well too with in that area.
I don't know if I can address that. Mary, are you aware of any of that? So the insurance under XM Bank that this person is talking about, insurance for perishable items, do you know?
So that, yeah, they would have to probably research that with XM depending on which policy they take out, because you can have multi buyer policies, you can have a single buyer policy, and they include different things depending on what you're looking for. As far as the inspection goes, if you're shipping an item overseas and it gets to your buyer and that buyer has to inspect it before they will accept it, if you have SBA financing, that financing stops at inspection. We don't finance anything that has to be after an inspection, because a lot of times you'll look at that, say you said, okay, you're going to ship me 90 blue shirts and you get 90 red shirts. Well, upon that inspection, now they don't have to accept that item. So all the financing we would do would stop at that point. That's as much as we would finance. And if an inspection is involved, we don't do that. And if what they're asking, and maybe they can unmute themselves and ask the question a little more clearly so we answer it correctly about the inspection. So whoever answered, if they can maybe unmute themselves, or Jamie, if you can, I'm sorry, if Brittany, if you can unmute whoever that was and have them answer, and then maybe I can answer more clearly.
Right. Okay. So let me see. I had John asking the question. So John, I just unmuted you. So if you could.
Oh, there. Okay.
Yes.
Yes, it's just like if you're going to send something, it's perishable. I've heard nightmares about how the shipping people will send your container somewhere else, and then it goes off on the dock. And I talk to some people and they say, well, you should just go there at least initially, and then find people to work with, and that there's some customs people to work with. But that I had that concern, in that, recently you heard about how the containers were overloaded on one of the barges by Young Brothers, and they were floating around in Hilo Bay,
Right.
Stuff like that.
Okay, so for that, I would say, okay, when it comes to the shipping, if you're using a freight forwarder, they're going to be responsible that you're paying them to do that, and they're going to make sure that it gets to the proper place. So if a freight forwarder would be the one that would handle that. But if you're looking to get insurance that covers that may be out there, but you would have to check with XM Bank to see what's all included in your policy. Just like I said earlier, it's like a car policy. Maybe you have, insurance that covers liability and some other things, but it doesn't cover somebody else if they don't have insurance. So depending on that insurance policy, it could cover that in case it's lost, it's dropped, or something is damaged. Usually the policy has that in there, but you just have to read what it's covered on that. But whoever you have if you're working with a freight forwarder or a custom broker, they will make sure that it gets to where it's supposed to be without those issues. I hope that answers what you're asking.
Yes.
Okay, Jamie, next question. Brittany.
Okay.
Okay.
Another
So
question?
Right. So we actually do have a couple questions, but I do know that we are running a little short on time. So Jamie, did you want to proceed and then get to the other questions afterwards, or how did you?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. We can go to the next slide.
Okay.
Because I've pretty much covered the basics of the high step program. But like I said, you know, it's transitioning, and as we go through this pandemic, we're looking at what the trends are out there in terms of what's available now and how we help companies proceed with their exporting. A lot of what we're doing now is in the area of e-commerce and trying to help companies that don't already have the ability on their website to sell. We're actually working with Innovate Hawaii, who is focusing a lot on this area. Of course, because it's high step, we are looking at focusing on companies that want to sell abroad and tool up for that. So we are, again, learning. I'm learning a lot about the e-commerce, about digital marketing and things like that, and moving more in that space. So for high step, really what we're looking at, as I said, you know, it's open to companies that are just thinking about exporting, all the way to those that already export. But we are looking to expand exports and revenues for Hawaii produced goods and services. We're wanting to get a larger overall number of our Hawaii companies active in global markets, and then we want to penetrate new markets for Hawaii's goods and services. Next slide. So eligibility for high step, basically you need to meet the federal requirements of what SBA terms an eligible small business concern. The thing that I do want to point out, and it's just basically, you know, you have to be registered and operating in the U.S. and you have to meet the standard sizes for a small business, which I think almost all Hawaii businesses will meet, other than the, you know, some of the large companies will think that you'll think of. But one of the things I want to point out is the 51% U.S. content, because when the STEP program started several years ago, that was not in there, but I think this is maybe the third year. And it is something, though, that is required by the U.S. Department of Commerce if you use any of their services, that your product must contain 51% of its value must come from sources, you know, whether it's your labor or any of the materials or whatever, but basically 51% U.S. content. For us, we try to, or we say we give priority to companies that are meet the Made in Hawaii standard, which is 51% made in Hawaii. So. Secondly, you have to certify that you are not prohibited from receiving any federal funds. So there are two forms that every company that participates in high step has to fill out that comes from the SBA. You also have to be registered to do business here with our business registration people at DCCA, and you also have to be registered within general excise tax number in the state of Hawaii. Next slide. So that's basically the eligibility. So if you are eligible, I would encourage you to go to our website, which again is invest.hawaii.gov. Go under the exporting tab to high step. We have an online registration form. It's still open right now, and you can fill that out. But basically, we're winding down this current year, and we'll be picking up starting in October for 2021. When we say registration, I want people to understand it's not an application like it. There's no question unless you're not eligible with any of what I just went through on the previous slide. But other than that, what we really want is, I would describe it more as like an intake form. We want information about your company and about your past experience with exporting. And so we'll ask for some information about your company is basically what it is. Next slide, Brittany. And so let me take you through what happens when you submit a registration form. It comes to us, it's online, it comes to us, and then basically looking at the information you provide there, we will direct you to one of our high-step partners. So again, the Hawaii Pacific Export Council, Small Business Development Center, the Ming Center, or Innovate Hawaii, depending again on several things that you put into your registration form. We will direct you to one of our partners, and they will gather more information from you about your company and talk with you more one-on-one about what some of the issues you might have, or if you are doing an export plan, they can help you developing that. So whatever, this is where the one-on-one advising is. And you'll talk with them at least once. And just depending on the issues you have, it may go further, and we leave that to our partners. And after that, then, basically between the one-on-one and our export training sessions, hopefully that would prepare you to take advantage of either applying for company assistance or participating in our trade shows. Next slide. So that's basically it. If you have any questions, that's my contact information there. My colleagues Mark Ritchie and Lyle Fujikawa also assist in this program. And as well as a number of other people, but we basically, Mark and Lyle also give presentations like this, so we have their contact number on there, but you can speak with any one of us. But thank you for being here, and again, we'll take any questions right now.
Thank you so much, Jamie. And Mary, if we can have you come on. We do have a couple of questions that did come in through the chats. And so Jamie and Mary, we had a question about, well, actually, maybe this might be more for Jamie, but Jamie, are there other markets that that participate in the show, like the shows that you had referred to earlier?
I'm sorry.
I know that there's right other industries that participate in the different shows that
okay.
PBET is a part of.
So basically, the shows that we've participated in, just to give you an idea, have been shows that really can encompass a wide range of our companies that produce Hawaii-made products. So that's why we've done the Tokyo Gift Show. In the past, we've done Surf Expo. So some, and like I said, natural products. So shows that can feature a lot of Hawaii products, shows that reflect our Hawaii lifestyle and the kinds of products that reflect Hawaii lifestyle. As far as markets, so the domestic shows that we've gone to, meaning the shows that have been in the US, those are international shows. So we do see buyers from all over the world. We, as far as the ones we've done in other countries, we've basically done shows in Japan. We will look to expand in future years, but you know, as Mary pointed out, when people are getting into exporting, oftentimes it's better to go with the English-speaking countries first, but so many of our companies are interested in Japan, and you know, for a lot of reasons, you know, historical, cultural, and so forth, and because we get a large number of our international visitors from that base, and that's a lot of times how the flow starts for the companies, is that Japanese visitors will go out and purchase it here, and it kind of creates interest in Japan. So. But at those shows, there are other buyers from other countries as well. But of course, you know, the main number have been from Japan. So, and again, the only show that we've done that has been very specific has been our biotechnology show. That's an area that we committed to for many years, and it's a small sector of our economy, but one area that has a lot of potential. So.
Thank you. And we actually have time for one more question. So Mary, you kind of touched upon this a little earlier where you're saying that, oh, well, some people who have services, sometimes they're doing the export of their service to other countries. And so the question is there anywhere you would send web designers to assist with getting, like businesses online or whatnot, or have you seen that actually? Have you worked with any businesses here locally?
Not for web designers per se, but I think if you're doing business in web design right now, it'd be a great market for you just here domestically trying to help businesses to set up to do their international business. But I think where you're going to have to look at is the translation component of it. Can you do the translation of different languages on that site along with the e-commerce? So I think it's definitely great potential for you, but that's something you might want to go through step and see if there's possible funding for you to, do that.
Right. Thank you. And I think is like how you mentioned, the translation is very important. You mentioned earlier that, we don't want to offend anyone. And I think have all seen those sites where we've come across and we've seen a translation that isn't exactly correct and it doesn't read right. And then also too, it conveys like the wrong information as well too. So that's definitely something that you need to be careful of in branching out to those markets. But like both Mary as well as Jamie said, do your research and then also to get in contact with the community resources. But now I really want to thank everyone again for joining us today. This concludes the end of our webinar. And so I'm actually just going to bring up our information one more time for both Jamie and Mary. Okay, 1 second. All right, thank you. So for everyone's reference again, here is the contact information for both Mary and Jamie. If you would like to reach out to them, if you have any other questions, here is their email as well as their phone numbers. And then also too, wanted to let you know if you are interested in taking advantage of the resources here through the Patsy Teaming Center, as Mary had mentioned, as well as Jamie. At the Patsy Teaming Center, we provide small business resources, including one-on-one counseling with our business counselors. Right now, we know a lot of the small business community is really suffering right now because of COVID-19. So we're very grateful to be able to provide these types of workshops to help you get through this time, and also to helping you explore other avenues to bring in more business for you, as well as to help you get through this time. But if you are interested in meeting with us, you can email us at mcbl@ywcaoahu.org or call us at 695-2635. In addition, please check out all the other small business resources, as well as find out more about Chatsma Hawaii. So the Patsy Teaming Center is actually a resource partner with DBED for the Buy Hawaii Give Aloha campaign. So not sure if you have all heard about it, but it's a recent program that just started. So just wanted to go over that with all of you because we really think that it is a great opportunity for our business community. So recently, DBED created the Buy Hawaii Give Aloha program to help our small business communities, and it's no cost for Hawaii companies. And basically, they will list your products on their Buy Hawaii Give Aloha site. The only thing is companies that are listed on there, they should have at least 75% of their total products being made here in Hawaii. And you can check out more information on their website. I'll put the website link into the chat area for your reference, as well as email that over to all of you. But that's for example, one of the resources, or opportunities that we share through Chatsma Hawaii with all of our partners. But anyways, thank you again for joining us, and please check out our website for future webinars and events. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.